Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome back to another special episode of the Rams Skinny. Special guest came on right before the draft. Back with us now, one of the best in the business, lead draft analyst for Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange, and our co-pilot. I know he doesn't live there anymore, but from the best kept secret in America, Tampa Bay International Airport, Trevor Sikkema. What's up, brother? How we doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I forgot that that's how we opened the show last time, and so I hope that you remind me of that basically every time, because I always just love to think about the joys of the Tampa International Airport. And I mean that sincerely, everybody listening. There's no sarcasm in there. It's one of the GOAT airports. So, guys, it is so good to be with you.
If anyone, thanks, man. No, if anyone's though, if you've seen the show or the movie, Yes Man, Jim Carrey, where he just goes to the airport, buys like a random ticket to Nebraska. Do yourself a favor and do that to Tampa Bay. Just buy a ticket to Tampa Bay. You won't be disappointed. The airport there does not disappoint. But Skinny T, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good. Now I want to go visit a Hudson News or something like that so I can get my airport fix in.
Hudson News, a Brookstone, whatever.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, Trevor, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate it. And you truly are one of the best. So draft, what are we, 2 months past or a month and a half past when that wrapped up? We had you on right before talking, and you specifically, when we're talking Rams at their pick 19, love Latu. You love Johnny Newton. You love Byron Murphy as fits for them. Obviously, Latu and Murphy went right before Newton was on the board. They end up going with Jared Verse. So just at the top, just curious your thoughts on them going with more edge than inside and going with Jared Verse out of Florida State.
Yeah, so I like Verse. I wasn't sure if the Rams would be keen on him specifically, just because he is more of that like heavy-handed traditional 4-3 defensive end. And I know right after he got drafted, somebody either asked McVay or Snead kind of about that. And they're like, well, we're going to use him everywhere, right? I mean, they're going to kick him inside a little bit. They're going to play him at edge. And Verse has been a stand-up outside linebacker during his time when he was at Florida State. He just, it wasn't when he was at his best, I would say. So for this team, if they want to be more of a 3-4 team, stick with being an odd front, even with Raheem Morris not there, then that's why his name really didn't come up in the pre-draft conversations that we were having. Now, that doesn't make him any less of a really impactful prospect, right? I mean, I thought those other two guys could have been better, just easier scheme fits, but versus somebody who I've really enjoyed watching over the last 2 years. I think we talked about this on the show. If he would have come out for the 2023 NFL draft, I think he's probably a top 10 pick. Truly. Like, I think, and the reason why he wasn't in this draft, the reason why he falls a little bit more, he didn't get worse. The draft class was just better. Right. I mean, like there were more quarterbacks going at the top of the draft. There were more wide receivers. It was a star-studded offensive tackle class. So that kind of pushes players down the board a little bit more. So I think the fact that they were picking, was it 19? I think it was 19, right? Picking at number 19 in this year's draft and still got a player who would have gone top 10 the year before, that just tells you, I think that they did a really good job there just evaluating the talent. But he is somebody who I'm intrigued of how they are going to deploy him. Because of what I said, I feel as though he is a easier fit into the puzzle piece of a 4-3 even front defensive team. So I'm just curious to see how they're going to line him up this year.
Yeah, all good stuff there. It's fascinating what this defense is going to look like without Aaron Donald. As we know, he's retired. And I just wanted to hit on the draft. One more question there. Were there any other guys that you were shocked that the Rams took or pleasantly surprised?
So I don't know if like shocked is the word, but I really liked their draft class. I really did. It's a lot of guys that I was fans of throughout the draft process. Like Verse, like I said, been one of my guys, and I'll just kind of like rapid fire him a little bit here. Verse, one of my favorite guys over the last 2 years. Braden Fisk, I was higher on Braden Fisk, I think, than a lot of other analysts. Like a lot of analysts looked at Braden Fisk and they were like, okay, he's got the shorter arms. Yeah, he's got the explosiveness. He's super quick, but it's shorter arms. It just doesn't really have that build exactly for somebody who's going to survive at the NFL level. But if anybody knows how to make the most of undersized defensive tackles, it's clearly the Los Angeles Rams. So I'm not saying that this guy's going to be Aaron Donald, but I am saying that he's going to a situation that they know how to use it, right? They have seen the lack of measurables from that position, and they've been able to turn it into a strength. Like Kobie Turner is another example of that. So I like the landing spot for Braden Fisk. I really do. Blake Corum, funny. I think he's got the best vision of any running back that was in this past class. I mean, some people like Trey Benson as RB1. I had Jonathan Brooks, but I had Blake Corum as RB2. And it's because I just have so much faith that this guy's going to find the open space. And, I think if you were to stack Blake Corum up against Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson or Jalen Wright or like a bunch of these other backs, is he going to measure up athletically? No, maybe not. He's not necessarily the 40, 50, 60-yard home run hitter in the backfield. But as I often told people throughout the draft class, I'd rather get a guy. How many opportunities do you have to actually hit a 50-yard run? So very few. So very few. I'd rather have the guy that gives me more than 4 yards a carry every single carry. Give me the healthy yards per carry average. And for me, that's exactly what Blake Corum is. Close to the ground, low center of gravity, great balance, understands how to see the field and the blocking schemes very, very well. So him getting paired with Kyren Williams, I really like that pairing as well. Cam Kinch's is somebody who I thought, could have been a top 50 pick when we were going into the year last year. It just didn't really play to that caliber, but he is a good rotational safety, somebody that I think could potentially start for them at some point. Their 5th and 6th round picks, these next two guys, really love Tyler Davis in the 6th round. I think it's a massive steal. I think he's been an underrated part of Clemson's defensive line over the last 3 seasons. Brennan Jackson is somebody that I came to love as the draft process went on, got to watch more tape of him. He is, again, somebody who I think can play that edge rusher / 3-4 defensive end type of a hybrid role because of how strong he is. You're drafting Josh Carty. Okay, it's a kicker. You just obviously hope it works out. So it is a special teams pick. Love Jordan Whittington over the last couple of years. He's just been injured, right? I mean, he was he was a Texas high school football superstar when he was coming into college football. And unfortunately, just injuries have kind of derailed what could have been a much more successful career for him. But the talent level is there as long as he is healthy. Bo Limmer, KT Leviston, those are two guys who give you a lot of versatility at each of those spots. I think Leviston can be a guard tackle, versatile player for you. I think Limmer can play any of the 3 interior offensive line spots. So it's very easy for me to look at this Rams draft class. And even though at the very top, it's like, all right, Verse, kind of need to see how they're going to use him there. And then Fisk, it's like, okay, is he going to have the success level that he had in the second half of the season when he was at Florida State this past year? If you check both those boxes, I think the rest of the class I think it's an A draft, truly.
Yeah. I think we both have the draft class as well. And, there was moments, it's one of those things. I think the draft always does this, right? Like the shock and awe, and you're like, ooh, I don't know about that. And then the more you kind of peel the onion back, like I remember the Blake Corum pick. We love the player Blake Corum. I think I agree with you. He was like RB2 in this draft, and what he did at Michigan was unbelievable. But for us, it was like, an Audric Estime or someone felt like a nice 1-2 combo with Kyren Williams, something different that would give them some different versatility back there. But then when you start hearing Sean McVay and Les Stevens saying like, well, we like that style of runner, and we never want that style off the field. So what are you going to do? You're going to draft someone that runs the same style. So it makes sense.
And that is something that I think people sort of just don't realize is like, it doesn't always have to be a thunder and lightning, like a smash and dash. When you think of like complementary by committee backs, people immediately think, okay, you got the short yardage guy who's playing on the early downs, and you got the third down guy, or you got the scat back and you got the power back. And sure, obviously, combinations like that have worked in the NFL over the years. And I just think that's what our minds gravitate towards. But in reality, like, I'm a Tampa guy, obviously. Tampa Bay Trey is the Twitter handle. When they drafted Bucky Irving, a lot of people were like, well, Bucky Irving's kind of the same running back as Rachaad White, who they already have. And they're like, isn't this redundant? It's like, no, it's not redundant. It's actually, it's just a different view of a committee where you say, okay, now we have a streamlined idea of what production we can get from our running back position. But instead of just having one guy who could do it, now we've got 2. So now you keep both of these players fresh, and it's the same style. I think an underrated part of running back room evaluation is if you have 2 guys who are drastically different at their skill sets, but more importantly, drastically different in how they run the ball. Like, how eager are they to get to the line of scrimmage? Are they a really north to south runner? Do they want to kind of be patient in the backfield? Are they not afraid to bounce to the outside? That can sometimes be tough on your offensive line, right? Because like they're blocking for 2 different styles, right? I mean, like, you might have an offensive line who, in the back of your head, okay, this running back behind us, we're running a man gap power scheme. We're running duo, whatever it is. I am moving the line of scrimmage as fast as possible because I know this running back behind me is going to get to the line of scrimmage as fast as possible. Whereas, if it's somebody who is much more patient, maybe likes to dance around a little bit, maybe likes to find things to the outside, you've got these offensive linemen who go, okay, let me get off the line of scrimmage really nice, but also let me get to my aiming point. I don't necessarily have to just make contact and push the guy as fast as I possibly can. So that is another, to me, nuanced part of running backs by committee and fighting that label that just because you got the same guy, it doesn't mean it's redundant. It could actually mean you're just keeping the same style that you love more fresh with two players that you trust.
Yeah. I mean, it's so well said. And it's obviously the mindset that Rams and many other teams have had. And, I think in LA, it's so easy to just think Lendell White, Reggie Bush in the USC years, right?
Yeah.
Which were the epitome of thunder and lightning. And so you think that, but if you commit to this style and you want that style at all times, like you said, it makes it easier on your offensive line, your scheme and all that makes total sense. And they got that in Blake Corum, which the more we've talked is like, this was a home run. I think it's a tremendous duo now. So Trevor, transitioning a bit to the schedule, ask you kind of an easy one up front. So we've talked a lot, Skinny and I, about this. I love new rivalries. There's obviously, your division rivalries that are always going to be there. Rams, Niners. Who would you say, this is not the question, but who would you say is the Bucs' biggest rival? Is it Falcons, Saints, or Panthers?
Oh, man. I think every year it's obviously a little different, right? Because if two teams are competitive, I mean, the teams in the NFC South genuinely hate each other. So if it's kind of those things where like whoever's competitive that year, like that's probably your main rival. I would tell you, I think it's the Saints. I think Bucs Saints is the big rivalry on that side of the division, and then I think Falcons Panthers is like the heated division between those two teams. I'm sure there's some fan bases that'll maybe argue with me one way or the other. Like, obviously, I think that it could be Tampa and Atlanta, but I don't think New Orleans, Carolina is as much as a rivalry there. Yeah. So if we're trying to kind of like divide it up into groups of two, Tampa and New Orleans do not like each other. I think the Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore, debacles that we've seen over the years is just a manifestation of how much those teams don't like each other. So I would say it's the Saints for the Bucs.
Yeah, totally. This was probably 5 years ago, but one of the most entertaining things I did one night when I was bored is, I'm sure you've been on the cesspool that is Reddit every now and then. And I was on Falcons Reddit and hearing fans talk about Sean Payton, formerly of the Saints' lips. And then on Saints Reddit, hearing fans talk about Matt Ryan looking like a pencil head. I mean, it was just comedy hearing these subreddits talk about their hated rivals. So anyway, my question was these new rivalries, and we feel like it's obviously established now because of the trade, but this new budding rivalry, Detroit, LA, and that's where the season is kicking off in Detroit after it ended for the Rams in Detroit. Just your thoughts as a national analyst, because you're not here in LA, but what's your kind of thoughts on this Lions, Rams refound rivalry? Because Detroit's such a different city than LA. The way these organizations, though, are very similar in the sense that Brad Holmes came from the Rams. Jared Goff came from the Rams. There's a lot of synergy between the teams. The cities may be different. Just your thoughts overall on this kind of new fun rivalry that is taking over.
Yeah, I think it's a ton of fun when you get outside division rivalries like this, and it's ones that it's not guaranteed to happen every year, but if it happens, it's probably going to be in the postseason, right? So I think those are always really fun. Like, again, I don't mean to have, the Tampa narrative hijack the show, but, when I was growing up, Tampa and Philly, like it was the Bucs and the Eagles in so many of those like NFC championship games or NFC divisional rounds. And for a while, like the Bucs just could not get past the Eagles. And then the year they finally do, obviously they get to the Super Bowl and they win it that year. But it's like, that was fun for me because that was like, okay, they're not an NFC South team, like Philly, nowhere close to Tampa, but that was just a fun rivalry that they had there. I love all of the elements that are just in with the Rams and the Lions. And obviously, like when you swap quarterbacks like that and both guys are still very successful, even though they change locations, that's only going to amplify, everything about it. But I always love when there are rivalries like that. I'm trying to kind of like, scroll and see some other team. Like Cowboys 49ers feels one because there's so much history there, rich history between those two teams. Kansas City and Buffalo, certainly over the last 4 to 5 seasons, the times that they have met in the postseason, that one's definitely a big one as well. So I like Colts, Patriots for the longest time when Manning and Brady were both on the team. Like that's always fun to me is when you get these rivalries that it's not a guarantee you get them every single year, but when you get them and when you're probably going to get them in the postseason, you just get to talk about the history. And normally it's one team keeping the other one away from an NFC championship or AFC championship or even the Super Bowl. So that makes the stakes and the hatred, if you will, even better.
Yeah. So, and real quick, and then Ryan, you can jump to your question, but sorry, I keep cutting you off, but no, it's funny too. Cause Trevor, I don't know if you have seen this or not on social, but like when the trade first happened, there was really no animosity between the fan bases. Like the Lions fans were like pseudo Rams fans, like pulling for Stafford to win it. And then for whatever reason, that just shifted. And now like Lions fans like hate Rams fans. Obviously everyone knows Stafford got booed when he went back. And then so now Rams are like, whoa, we like welcomed you in and now we don't like you. So it's so funny that now there's like even animosity towards each other.
Lions fans are very protective of how good their team should be. And I don't really say that in a negative way, right? I wrote the starting 32 quarterback ranking article for PFF heading into the 2024 season. And I had Jared Goff 16. And, you look at a lot of different PFF metrics and it's like, yes, he operates the offense very, very well. And I don't mean 16 as a slight. I really don't. Like, I want to give him so much credit for what he has done when he's been in Detroit and with Ben Johnson, everything like that. But there are other quarterbacks who are better individual creators. If you take them out of your system, if you're doing the true, like, okay, we're taking you out of this and we're putting you on an average team, average coordinator, average offensive line, there's other quarterbacks that I would trust more. And it doesn't make Jared Goff any less good at what he does now in Detroit in that system. But, oh, baby Lions fans came for me on that one. And I get it, right? They are right there. They don't want anybody to put out into the world anything that would give them some bad vibes, some bad energy, some bad juju, whatever you want to call it, because they are on a potential Super Bowl run. So it makes sense that as both of these teams have been good since the Stafford and Goff trade, the Rams have won their Super Bowl. Now the Lions feel like it's their time. So they're like, okay, yeah, we were happy for you before. Now the Lions fans aren't going to be happy with anybody. Lions fans aren't willing to, now I don't mean to like generalize, but it's like, they don't want to give respect to anybody. They want their respect, right? They want them to earn it. So it is, it's always funny when that happens.
Yeah, fan psychology is just one of the interesting glimpses into humanity that it's just a part of my job that I don't get to talk about enough. But talking about your rankings, you've got Matthew Stafford, the Rams quarterback, number 7, right ahead of Aaron Rodgers, which probably makes a lot of Rams fans pretty happy about that. I don't know if you got any feedback on that one, but we've had Ryan and I have had this conversation about the breadth of which the ratings Stafford gets. I've seen him as high as 3, seen him in 5.
Yeah. And
I've seen him down in the teens as well. So like what's your thought process putting him there at 7 ahead of Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, look, anybody that would rank Matthew Stafford in the teens of quarterback rankings in the NFL, I'll just say like outside the top 10. I mean, it's wrong. It's just wrong because Stafford still has some arm talent left, right? I mean, like, okay, maybe it's not like it was the first couple of years when he was coming out of Georgia, but he's still got plenty of arm talent left. And the wisdom that this dude plays with is incredible, whether it's knowing exactly what angle he needs to make make the ball come out of his hand, or whether it's the no-look passes, seeing things pre-snap, manipulating them post-snap. He right now reminds me of like what Drew Brees was 2-3 years before he retired. And I think that Stafford has always had a little bit more arm talent than Drew Brees. So naturally it's just going to still remain a little bit higher as he ages. But like, you remember those years when Brees didn't necessarily have as much juice in the arm as he did before, but still 2-3 years before he retired, like the Saints were still winning double-digit games. They were still winning the division. Like they were still a perennial team that you had to watch, who had one of the best offenses in the NFL. And it's because Brees would beat you with his mind before he did so with his arm. And to me, that's where Matthew Stafford is. Stafford is just consistently beating you with his mind before he does it with his arm. And I think that is just a rare area that he is in right now of how well he is playing. I think last year absolutely showed that. Rodgers, they're obviously right there at 7 and 8. I think both of those guys are in a similar conversation for similar reasons. With Rodgers, it's just the fact that we didn't see anything last year. And unfortunately, it is a little bit of what have you done for me lately, because sure, Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs 2 seasons ago, but he didn't play last year. He's getting a year older, and Stafford had one of the best years of his career, at least the most efficient years of his career. So how can I not give him the nod there? So look, I'm so impressed with how well Stafford has been able to play, because, he comes into the league, what was it, 2000? Was he 2009? When was it? Was he the 2009 draft?
I think 9. That sounds right.
Yeah. So he comes in the league and he does so on the billing of arm talent. We go, this dude's just got an absolute howitzer. It's an NFL arm. And as the years have gone on, as he has gone through injuries, he has made it so he has had a very, very long NFL career, a very, very successful long NFL career, because he was not satisfied at just being more physically gifted than a lot of other players. He's very clearly put in the work to be smarter and wiser than a lot of these guys as well. And I think that's why you got to have him in the top 10 of those lists.
Yeah, totally. We totally agree. And so you're right. You're the right analyst compared to others. I still don't. Yeah, we laugh all the time. Like, how does some people? We saw one. Didn't one have him at like 19, Ryan? Like, I don't like. It was just.
I just block those guys out of my mind. I have no time for that.
Mind blowing.
Well, here's a question into the psychology, anyways. How has he flown under the radar? How is he? I don't want to say he's been disrespected or anything like that, but what, you hear a guy like CJ Stroud talking about how Stafford's the guy he watches, and he thinks that he would have multiple championships if he was put into a situation like Aaron Rodgers was. How is it just because he was in a bad situation for so long that he's kind of underrated?
Yeah, it's the Justin Herbert thing, right? I mean, like, people look at Justin Herbert right now and they go like, oh, his team hasn't won. That means he's not good. And it's like, look, quarterback can control a lot of things, but like, that's it. It's silly how much of the piece of the pie people are saying QB wins matters for Justin Herbert right now. They're just doing everything they can. People who just don't like Justin Herbert, it feels like they're doing everything they can to like just discredit how, I think, incredibly talented this dude is. And I think that Matthew Stafford suffered from the same thing, right? You look at his best years when he was in Detroit. And I will say this too, his most healthy years. Mm-hmm. They didn't win. They never won. And they even had Megatron to throw it to, and people were like, oh, he can't even win with Megatron. And it's just like, that kind of just goes to show you that it's more than just a quarterback game. But to me, it was always the fact that Detroit was not good when Matthew Stafford was there. And then sort of what's it been, the last 5 seasons? I think a couple of them were still in Detroit and then a couple of them in LA. Like, he has been hurt. So now I wonder if people just look at him and go, okay, how old is he now? Is he mid-30s? Was he 35? I think
36.
I think he's like 37.
35, 36.
Yeah.
So now, like, people look at him and they go like, okay, he's 36 now. He's missed people will say in their mind, like, a bunch of games over the last 4 or 5 years. And they don't really have the pedigree of what he was in Detroit as somebody who didn't win at all. So, like, even the Super Bowl, I feel like sometimes doesn't overcome the first impressions that people had entrenched in their mind when he was Detroit's quarterback. So it's been sort of tougher for him to get that recognition, but I do still think that a lot of people have kind of come around to that. We saw him a lot higher in those rankings this year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I always laugh at that. Well, he had Megatron and couldn't win. It's like, well, that one year Brady, the greatest ever, he had Randy Moss, Gronk, Hernandez, and lost the Super Bowl that year. Like, what receiver? But anyway, last question. We'll get you out of here on this, Trevor. You wrote another great article over at PFF.com, kind of listing out your top 3 players of each team. And, it used to be a really easy question for the Rams, right? It was Stafford, Kupp, Donald. Boom. Not even a debate. Now Donald's gone. Kupp is kind of on the draft. I think you could still make the argument he's there, but who do you have as your top 3 kind of Rams heading into 24?
So the 3 guys that I came up with is Cooper Kupp. I still think fully healthy Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I think he's just a volume return on investment type of machine. Matthew Stafford is also on this list, number 2. And then Puka Nacua, to me is number 3 here, because you're right. Aaron Donald opened the door for Nacua to be included here on this list. If Donald was still here, obviously he is on there. But man, I just still cannot get over how incredible of a season Puka Nacua had. And I'm a draft guy, right? Like sometimes I'll watch a player and I'll go, yeah, man, I didn't see him the way I needed to if he succeeds at the NFL level. Or a lot of times it's just vice versa, right? If I see a guy and I project him really high and he doesn't turn out well, they call those like scouting lessons, obviously. So, but when I watch Nacua, it's like, I thought that he was, an early mid day 3 pick type of a dude, and obviously was. And it's like, he is the same player that I exactly evaluated at BYU. He just wants to be great at a level that is even higher than other NFL players, which is crazy. I mean, the dude, just the way that he honed in on being a master of his craft, his rookie season, was unbelievable to me. So if that's the baseline, you've got to think that, okay, maybe he's not going to have exactly that kind of a year this upcoming year. But this is very clearly a guy who could be a 1,000-yard receiver every year because of what he already understands from the position as just a rookie. So to me, just how impressed I was with how mature his game was as just a rookie gives me so much faith to him having a high floor in this league for such a long time. And a floor of 800, 900, even 1,000 yards is just a silly thing to say about people. But I think Nacua is somebody who could just be a consistent producer when he is healthy every single year.
Yeah, 100%. Love it. And I think we've talked about this. He was like what the Rams needed, not just on the field, but off the field too. Like when you look at the Rams, like the one thing they've ironically struggled with since moving back to LA is having this like identity, this culture identity in Los Angeles. Because when you look at the team has been great, right? The roster construction, Sean McVay is amazing. Les Snead, but you look at the Matthew Stafford, all football all the time. Cooper Kupp, all football all the time. Aaron Donald, all football all the time. Finally, they have this guy, Puka Nacua, that can actually be this cultural identity. Like he's at the Zach Bryan concert at Crypto, getting the crowd going. And he brought Cooper Kupp like out of his shell. And like, you see some humanism in this. So not only did they get this great player of everything you said, but he's this like phenomenal person now that kind of become the face of this Rams organization. So love that you had them on there. And that's a perfect way to kind of end the show. So Trevor Sikkema, we thank you so much. Lead NFL draft analyst for PFF and co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. You can find him at Tampa Bay Trey on X. We, as always, appreciate the time, brother. Thank you so much. Be well. Enjoy whatever the off season is, I guess. Enjoy it. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.